Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. This is Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage while always betting on Black. Back once again in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and of course the home of African-centered news and information. If you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. And make sure you hit the of course, notification bell as well. We have a great show online intact for today titled Addressing the Current State of Pan-Africanism. Are we headed for chaos or community? One of the reasons I came up with this show, there was a sister actually on Facebook who discussed some of the hypocrisy of the conscious community. That actually, led me to say, I think we should do a show on the subject matter. So we invited her to come on. Hopefully she does. But I think this is an issue of concern in terms of where do we go from here. Of course, the play, this is a borrowed, of course, Dr. King, the title from Dr. King's last book, of course, Where Do We Go From Here, Community or Chaos, where he discusses his views and how they diverge from, of course, the Black Power movement, but also his concerns in terms of America engaging in the war in Vietnam, the war in Southeast Asia, rather than, of course, declaring a war on poverty. He kind of lines out his issues from a financial standpoint. So we talk about Dr. King advocating for human rights, being a human rights activist, and of course we know what happened next. Unfortunately, he was taken from us, of course, before his time at the tender age of 39. So just want to let people know that that's where, of course, the theme, the title, and of course the idea for the show came from. Of course, I saw a post online, but also some of the issues are germane to what's going on today, right? The contemporary political state, not only here in the United States, but globally, right? And so we would get into that. But once again, family, the link is in the description. The link is also, will momentarily be in the chat. So we definitely want people to tap in and be part of the conversation. And if you're watching on Twitter, you could come on over to YouTube as well if you want to be part of the conversation. And you can also comment as well if you're watching on Twitter. So, but a couple of issues. As I said it before, there was a sister on Facebook, and I invited her to come on to the show, and even some individuals who commented on her post regarding one of the issues we find in the community, conscious community, is a lack of accountability, right? This is something that I've been aware of in terms of individuals aren't actually, I would say, standing on their square. Some people say standing on business or standing on consciousness, standing on, of course, what it means to be someone who is unapologetically African, and of course, we associate that with someone who is living a life in connection with the highest moral standards possible. And then not to say that African people are morally superior to anyone else, but we should identify who we are in our own culture in a positive light. I think another issue is we see a lot of individuals promoting consciousness as a way to advocating for Black consciousness, what we like to call the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion, as a way of promoting their own personal brands, right? When there aren't any real solutions to issues. I know I was having a conversation with Brother Bequaline, who may be able to tap in, be part of this conversation. He shared with me how he noticed how a number of significant individuals in the Black conscious movement, or even in the Pan-Africanist movement, when they're discussing issues, it's typically surface level in nature. And so Brother Bequaline, of course, is an intellectually curious brother, and we appreciate, of course, being able to always do these dual streams of platforms with him. But one of the things he discussed was when he actually started reading some scholarly and peer-reviewed literature, he found that many of the individuals who were at the forefront of the Black conscious movement, even Pan-Africanism, the claims they were making were surface level at best, right? There wasn't a deep introspective analysis of the issues, and of course, then being able to come up with incisive solutions that were realistic for our brothers and sisters, right? So we see that's always been an issue. Individuals like to, bloviate, talk about it, and actually solve problems. I even discussed in my master's thesis that one of the problems I can find in terms of Pan-Africanism is the inclination, the practice of intellectualizing problems rather than actually solving them. So that's not something that we want to do on today's live. As many of you are aware, what we always seek to do is have conversations that are intellectually centered, but also constructive, to where we can walk away with solutions to the issues that African people are facing, irrespective of where we are in the world. So many of you will be aware of the live we did on the issue in South Africa in terms of pulling the aid. Many people felt that that was a hoax, and South Africa doesn't need the aid. Many of you may be aware of Brother Donald Samir stating, well, citing a sister who wrote the book Dead Aid, right? And why Africa doesn't need aid. And he said this would be a positive. But I said, I actually read the sister's book, and I read it twice, not once, twice in what she argues is, of course, for there to be a stair-step method in terms of reducing aid to Africa. But one of the issues is she never addresses issues of neocolonialism. She never addresses issues of Western nations and fomenting civil unrest to disrupt African economies, right? And so she kind of is operating in an echo chamber. And of course, her solution was to actually be dependent on Western markets and Western credit to build African economies rather than Western aid, but still would continue to leave African nations dependent economically, right? Financially, in terms of being able to develop wealth and jobs and infrastructure for, of course, their people, their citizens. So something to consider there. But also, we said the reality situation, there are boots on the ground, people on the ground who are unable to actually, receive the medical aid and supplies and medicine and care that they need. So one of the things we was able to come up with during that conversation was, if you were an elected official in South Africa, was reaching out to some neighboring African nations to see if you would be able to secure the medical supplies needed for your citizens, but also reaching out to other nations, not only on the continent, but even, of course, in Asia and even South America as well. So those were some of the conversations we had in terms of actual solutions to some of the issues that our brothers and sisters were facing, of course, in South Africa. So just want to make you all aware of that. Also, when we talk about where are we headed, chaos of community, we see there's some internal issues in terms of the African community. We know xenophobia, unfortunately, here in America has been running rapid, right, with organizations and movements such as ADOS and FBA. But also we even find this concept of white nationalism being global as well. It's always been global, but we've seen a rather strong and strident resurgence of white nationalism. A great example would be, of course, the election, of course, of Donald Trump. But also, we talk about J.D. Vance, which is the vice president from my state, Ohio, and then, of course, Elon Musk meeting and advocating for the German far-right group Alternative for Deutschland, right? This is a far-right group that has been banned in Germany because of the advocacy for not only the Holocaust, but also advocating for, of course, a return to the Nazi party and the views of Germany and the government that was akin to, of course, the time of Adolf Hitler. So as a result of that, many are unaware of this, right? That's why we need to be incisive, intellectually curious, and read, outside of just what the American media states. But so we see this push of the globalizing white nationalism, this far right return. We see Elon Musk speaking about what's taking place in South Africa and that the white people need to be aided in South Africa. And so these are some issues that we find in terms of white nationalism resurging globally. Some would argue that it's never actually been in the doldrums, but these are some of the issues that we want to address in terms of addressing the concept of Pan-Africanism. Are we headed for chaos or community? So tap in, family. I'm going to put the link in the chat. And then, of course, the link is in the description. I'm going to hear from you all. Where are we headed, chaos or community? And how do we build community? How do we go from chaos to community? So those are the questions that we're asking this evening. If you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Make sure you hit the notification bell as well. If you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction, once again, family, with Bequan Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home, keyword, the home of African-centered news and information. So, once again, family, we're talking about addressing the current state of Pan-Africanism, but that is open to, of course, the conscious community as well. Black consciousness, Black radicalism. Are we headed for chaos or community? Tap in, be part of the conversation. Would love to hear what you all have to say about this important contemporary issue, of course, in the life of African people globally. So once again, family, tap in. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. And if you want to cam up, and we encourage you to do so, and we definitely need sisters to tap in and be part of the conversation as well. Sisters in the struggle are always important. Defender Logic states he can only tap in via chat at the moment. No problem, brother. Yeah, so please, be a keyboard warrior this evening. All right, be a keyboard warrior this evening. No problem there. And of course, family, as you know, if you want to tap in and be part of the conversation, you do not have to cam up. You do not have to cam up, and you can use a pseudonym. We actually advocate that you use a pseudonym, as we know. Oftentimes, particularly if you're here in the Western world, advocating for views that, of course, center African people, center Black people, could be seen as problematic. And so we definitely don't want to put people in harm's way in terms of their employment, their livelihood. So once again, you do not have to cam up, and you can use a pseudonym to protect your identity during, of course, this conversation. So definitely looking forward from hearing from you all. Look forward to hearing from Defender of Logic in the chat. As he states, he's going to be a keyboard warrior this evening. As you all know, you're watching, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with Beacon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. Tap in, be part of the conversation. We're discussing, are we headed for chaos, or community? That is the question. Are we headed for chaos or community, family? Tap in, be part of the conversation. Let us know what you think. Are we headed for chaos or community? I want to hear from you all. Are we headed for chaos or community? Tap in, be part of the conversation. You do not, keyword, you do not need to cam up and be part of the convo when you can use a pseudonym to protect your identity. So I think we have a comment from Defender of Logic. So let me see what you have to say here, brother. Let's see here. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. Give me 1 second. Some changes here. It says, I remember when you were saying that Pan-Africanism was on life support. Yes. Do you think it would ever be resuscitated? Woo! Great question. Yes, I did say that. I said that Pan-Africanism was on life support. It's possible. I think it's possible to be resuscitated. I think one of the issues that we're really going to have to face is, how do we shift from simply cultural programming, intellectual masturbation, as some would say, intellectualizing problems, to building institutions that address the needs of our people? I think that's the biggest issue, right? I think the lack of institution building is a major problem in terms of why Pan-Africanism has lost its currency as the vanguard movement of African people globally, right? And so typically what takes place in the Black community is, if you have a problem, you go to an institution. It may be a community center, it may be a food pantry, right? It may be a religious institution, right? But you're going to an actual institution. And so I would argue that in order for Pan-Africanism to, of course, resuscitate itself, we must build institutions that address the needs of the people. Of course, I'm a strong advocate of the term treat people's needs as holy, right? There's a brother, Barry M. Hendricks. He wrote a book on the politics of Jesus. He argued that Jesus' politics were revolutionary in nature. And he argued that Jesus' goal, his politics, were focused on treating people's needs as holy. And I would argue that as Pan-Africanists, we had to treat our people's needs as holy as well. And the best way to do that is by building an institution that addresses the issues that our people face on a diurnal basis. So appreciate the question, brother Defender of Logic. I'm making a presumption that you are a brother. If you are a sister, I do apologize. But once again, family, you'll tap in. We're discussing, are we headed for chaos or community? So we're addressing the current state of Pan-Africanism, but also the current state of course, the conscious community and Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. So tap in, be part of the convo. So the question I have for you, brother Defender of Logic, is, do you think Pan-Africanism would ever be resuscitated? And what are your thoughts on individuals in the Black community who are adverse to Pan-Africanism, who tend to show that they have an anathema for Pan-Africanism? That is the question I would have for you. I hope that you can tap in and be part of the convo, particularly in the chat. I know you're going to be a keyboard warrior this evening, and so we definitely appreciate that. But we definitely want some brothers and sisters to tap in and be part of the conversation on the live. Once again, you do not have to cam up. Keyword, you do not have to cam up to be part of the conversation, and you can use a pseudonym. And there are no wrong answers. We want to have a conversation, facilitate a conversation that is intellectually charged, so that we can, of course, do what we can do to make the community, make the world better for African people at home and abroad. So we want to make sure that everyone knows our goal, particularly in terms of Pan-Africanism, is to what? Increase the quality of life of African people, right? The materiality of African people, wherever we are in the world. So shout out to Mr. Sandman. Appreciate the super chat. Pan-Africanism has so many African people that are against it. That is very true. Definitely hope you could tap in because I know you're going to drop some jewels this evening. The majority of Black people during the civil rights movement were against Malcolm X, for example. This is very true, and as Mr. Sandman pointed out, the majority of the civil rights movement was, of course, integrationist oriented, right? So that played a role in terms of there being some ideological schisms, ideological differences. We even see this now where we're really seeing a form of militant integrationalism with ADOS and of course FBA, this form of militant integrationalism, right? And then of course we know that a lot of individuals who are against Pan-Africanism have an anathema for Pan-Africanism. When you have a conversation with these brothers and sisters, they tend to be extremely ignorant of the ideology, of the movement, of the history. And so not so innocent plug, and Mr. Sandman knows this, but the D1 Beach knows this, Defender of Logic knows this. This is why we're doing our Pan-African Leadership Series, Past, Present, and Future, where we're chronicling the lives of Pan-Africanist leaders of the past to learn how to make a better world for African people in the future. And so I think we're up to part 11 or 12 of this Pan-African Leadership Series. And of course, we're going to chronicle up to 200 great Pan-Africanists from all over the world. So definitely want you all to make sure you are aware of that leadership series. And if you haven't, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button here at Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Brother LMA, who dribbles down the VA. What's good, brother? Okay, so Brother LMA, he's having some technical difficulties, but he will be back with us momentarily. Definitely appreciate the super chat, Brother Sandman. Anyone else, make sure you hit that super chat, family. We're back up and running. We, of course, are monetized now. It took us quite some time to monetize, but we appreciate the support. Definitely appreciate the support when I had to cancel the show this past Friday. As I stated before, there was a family issue in terms of health scare. That situation has stabilized, but of course, that family member is going to have surgery in about 12 days. So definitely, we won't be going live those 2 days that that family member's in surgery. But definitely just want to make sure you can send your well wishes and positive energy regarding that issue. Priest of Brother D1 Beast. The majority of African Americans even thought Martin Luther King was causing too much trouble. Facts. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So it wasn't even just a Pan-Africanist issue. Yes, the majority of African Americans, yeah, absolutely, saw Dr. King as a problem. He was a troublemaker, so on and so forth. So this is something that we tend to find, unfortunately, in the community. Still haven't met anyone offline that knows what ADOS or FBA is. Got you. Okay. All right. Well, top in, we can unpack that. I want to be hopeful, but in all honesty, I'm slowly starting to become extremely doubtful. Pan-Africanism is so far behind in terms of operations and infrastructure. How do we go about closing a 400-year gap? So this is a brilliant, brilliant statement, brother. My question is, when you say operations and infrastructure, what do you mean? Can you unpack that a little bit more for us in terms of what are the operations? What infrastructure are you speaking to? Are you talking about economic? Are you talking institution building? Talk to your boy. Brother LMA, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Doc? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you just fine.
Okay, cool, man. Hope things go well with your family. I just saw you going live, so I had to catch up. So the premise, can you restate the question? Can you restate the question for me?
For chaos or community, right? So, and there are a number of issues. There's a sister that I'm Facebook friends with, don't know her personally, but we're just Facebook friends, and she put up a post speaking regarding her dissolution with the Black conscious community. One of the things that she stated was hypocrisy. Individuals saying one thing, doing another. Individuals engaging in what one would argue is morally problematic or untoward behavior, right? And the individual is still allowed to come around and speak, and extremely problematic, unbecoming. Where is the accountability? And then I kind of extrapolated that to, of course, Dr. King. This was during the throes of the civil rights movement. He wrote his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, right? Because there tended to be some schisms between himself and, of course, Stokely Carmichael. Malcolm had been assassinated. Medgar Evers had been deleted. And a lot of individuals starting to question the efficacy of nonviolent direct action right? And so there were a number of issues at play. And so I borrowed from Dr. King, who, of course, ideologically we were on opposite ends of the street. He was across the street, but of course I respect his courage, his gravitas, and his commitment to African people. So honoring him, but also looking at some of the global issues as well. We could talk about, of course, the rise of a rather strident form of white nationalism here in the United States, globally as well. I talked about J.D. Vance and, of course, Elon Musk championing the far right German political party. I can't recall the name. Give me 1 second. Far right political party, Alternative for Deutschland, right, which is advocating for Germany to return to, of course, the policy and ideologies of one Adolf Hitler, right? So we see this going global now, right? And so it's always been global, but
it's always been global, yeah.
A strident form of white nationalism. And so the argument I have is, where in the French toast do we go from here? Do we go to chaos or do we go to community?
Well, yeah, that's a tough one, because I've given this some thought too. And when I think about like a community, what it takes to be a community, as a group of individuals, like it's tough. It's tough. Actually, it kind of goes back to the question that the young lady had on Facebook about, like, she was expressing her frustrations with the conscious community, and I think we've all seen it, where it's just that, and I've had my thoughts about this as well. Like, imagine that I had a friend of mine who was a bit older than me, and I asked him, when he thought of the term Hotep, and he thought of the term consciousness, what did he think of, And from his generation, he thought of, like, the brother that was down for his people, scholar, intellectual, yada yada yada, right? And I was like, okay, well, if you ask someone who's in their 20 now what a Hotep is, it's going to be the Oswald Bates character from In Living Color, and it was just like a yeah, you remember him, right? And I think, and I was listening to some other commentators who were also talking about it, and the issue became that,
yes, that's a good point.
right, we had a lot of, like, the scholars, to be scholarly, and I'm, a true scholar, a true intellectual takes years of work, years of study, years of just going through the, intellectual rigor and ringer of academia, reading books on top of books, getting into debates, but now with the social media era, you have people. I don't want to say names on your program, but people who just yesterday.
You can go ahead. You can go ahead. You can say that.
Yeah. What's that? Well, I was put it away. You got cats who were just beating their wives a week ago, now online talking about how they're pan-Africanist, pan-African that don't take it. You know what I'm saying? So it feels like there's a and black people, we have an appetite for it. So it's almost like this kind of like this weird commodification of black-centered, Afrocentric, Pan-African-centric intellectualism, but it's not the real thing. It's almost like getting a knock, almost like a knockoff, right? Like, when I think of like the true, pro-black intellectual, I think of like Amos Wilson. I think of John Henrik Clark. Like, those are like the, and they're contemporaries. I don't know all the names, but they're contemporaries, right? They're certified. They've gone through the, what I'm saying? They've put in the work, and they have the accumulated knowledge to prove it, right?
Right.
And then you have people who, who are on my level, and I'm not saying I'm the same, but on my level, who, may not have the time to, because not everyone can go to school for that many years, not too many people have an interest for it. So, like, a brief aside, the way it's supposed to be, you have a handful of people who go into academia, do the study, and then they come out and they make it bite-sized. So people like me, like I said, I did engineering, right? I don't got time to read, everything that, Amos Wilson did. I don't have time to read everything. I don't have time to read all this stuff. I need, folks like you to synthesize it, give it to me in a podcast so I can listen to it on my way to work. Okay, boom, I got the idea, and I just, and I can go on about my day. I have the ideas, I got the idea. Now I can move on with my life. It's almost, even for like myself, you think about mathematics, right? Like, if you think about like just a Pythagorean theorem, right? It took them cats, years to develop it, right? But it only took them, hundreds of years ago, in Greece and Egypt, Kemet, it took them, could have took them years to come up with it. But, when now 1,000 years later, now I'm learning it in like, a weekend. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how
right,
this supposed to go. But you have some people on my level who will take that information. Now they think that because they listen to it so much and they can regurgitate it, now they think that they are the true scholars, the true intellectuals. And then they
right,
can get online, start their podcast, and just start, repeating, parroting what they think they understood, get money because, like I said, they may have a little bit more charisma. And that's like a big thing too. Like I said, maybe a lot of scholars don't have the charisma to get in front of
right.
a microphone,
And
get in front of a
yeah,
camera,
yeah, yeah,
and that could be easily weaponized against the community because like I said, if you get someone who looks good, who sounds good, and they're saying something that's partially true, you can't, as a layman, you're not gonna be able to tell the difference.
right. That is very
So
true. Very
so
true. And,
like I said,
if I could interject, and I like what
go
you
ahead.
said, you're really speaking to neophytes, someone who gets a little bit of information, then they go
Yeah,
out, and now they think, they know more than everyone else. And you talked about the
yeah.
years of schooling and reading, the hundreds of books, so on and so forth. I was going to tell you, brother, stop it. You're giving me PTSD, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
I'll never have to do, I never have to do that again. Um,
yeah.
but
But you're gonna be
I
writing
think
the books this time.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna be writing the books this time instead of reading
Maybe one or two.
them.
The cat would be two, trust me.
Yeah.
But I think you're onto something here, right? And for example, I really think you're onto something. So I remember I was looking at joining an organization. It's titled Black Man Something.
A black man bill.
Okay, you said it, not me.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
I went to the orientation meeting. It was online, and one of the things the brother stated that they stated that the organization was opposed to patriarchy, and that patriarchy was Eurocentric. And so I said, well, you could be opposed to patriarchy, right? But patriarchy isn't Eurocentric. African societies have been patriarchal. I said Japanese societies are patriarchal. Asian Oriental societies are Asian. I said for patriarchal. So I said you're making claims that, of course, are opposed to facts and all that are ahistorical. There was a brother in the orientation who said, well, yeah, Brother Lumumba's right. I have a PhD in Ethiopian history, and Ethiopian societies have always been patriarchal, right? And so what tends to happen is what? Once again, someone's eloquent, they're loquacious, they're charismatic, they can get up in front of people and make claims that are averse to the facts. But since no one knows the actual information, they're able to get away with it, right? And I think that's what you're
Yeah.
speaking to. And that causes
Yeah.
a lot of problems in terms of the legitimacy of the movement. If this person is supposed
Yeah.
to be someone who is part of this organization or movement, why are they disseminating information that isn't factual? A lot of people call it feel good history.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, I think that's like the, I ain't gonna say the lower end, but like there's a worse threat than somebody just, in my opinion, which may sound crazy, like someone just passing off saying statements that aren't true or don't have the academic backing. But because, you may have someone who has a, what's what I'm looking for, have that type of charisma, and then they have the understanding or like the surface level understanding, at least to be able to repeat what they've heard. These guys, this is like, fertile grounds for predators, predators to come in, and now they have another vector in which to attack, the community, particularly the women of the community. You know what I'm saying? Because certain people
And
can come.
that is something
I think,
that's
and I
something
think
we've
that's to
seen.
me.
Not only women,
And
but
I mean,
children
women
as
and
well.
children. Yeah, but that to me is the biggest threat that people who are who are Pan-African, Afrocentric, pro-Black, that is going to be the biggest threat. That is the biggest house cleaning that we have to do. Is because like I said, even if someone may say that patriarchy is Eurocentric. Okay, he could have worded that better. He could have, like you said, he could have just said we're against patriarchy, but he messed up when he said, what I'm saying? That is a problem. But to me, the biggest threat in the conscious community, the pro-black community, are these, lack of a better term, sexual deviants and sexual predators who are, putting on the garb. I let this joke around. They're putting on the kufi. They're putting on the dashiki. They got the daggone, what was that? That Boondocks we said, like, wear your capri pants, man. Wear your capri, wear your beads. Wear your capri pants. And these guys, and sometimes women, will
Right.
get it. Don the attire, don the garb. Use the talking points, and then get
Correct.
people in a vulnerable position, and then take advantage of them. And now, not only have they, harmed this person, usually a woman, usually children, they have damaged the image of somebody who is trying to uplift their community. And to me, I think that's like the biggest threat that we have, and I think we need to really call it out because, and I think that in a sense that because I would say Pan-African. I know there's three separate, so Pan-African, Afrocentric, and Afrocentrism. I know they're three separate things. Pro-Black, I know they're four separate things, but whatever. But it's like we're kind of on the ropes now, and it's just like you don't want to. In the beginning, you don't want to turn into a circular firing squad because there's so few of you that it's kind of like you want to, build. You want to just start building, and you want to start, attacking your enemies, but you don't have the. Go back to the gentleman said, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the organization, and you pretty much you got traitors and agents of chaos in your midst, and you can't move forward with that. So you have to get rid of that. You have to get rid of the infection, the lack of a better term, so you can start building and have a building organization built on integrity. Because you cannot have these sexual deviants, not deviants, predators. Yeah.
Undo that.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
So the question, I don't know if you're having trouble hearing, but the question is, so how would you go about getting rid of these individuals?
I mean, it's going to have to be. Right. I mean,
and
one, call it out when you see it.
Quick, this goes to Defender of Logic. That real quick, LMA, real quick. This is just to address Defender of Logic. You talked about there being any available tech being available that you really counter or provide like a retort to some of the issues we see being discussed. So Panafricanism journal, a beacon that of course promotes Pan-African ideas globally. So panafricanism.com would be an example. Go right ahead, Brother LMA. Then we're going to give it to Brother D.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that we're just going to have to not be afraid and just realize, like, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we just need to do is just to go on a campaign and just call it out, and just we may have to do a circular firing squad, but we're going to have to people who are call themselves Pan-Africans and Pan-Africans Afrocentric centrism. You're going to have to turn the guns inward for a bit, and we're going to have to clear house. It just is what it is. I mean, you're going to have serious, not just debates, but I'm talking about like full on exposés, full on attack pieces. Because I mean, it's going to suck, but like, let's say, for instance, you got the sister who just been done dirty. I'm gonna say sister. I'm gonna say person. It could be a sister. Most likely gonna be a sister, but it could have been a guy, man, child, whatever. Okay. Put it this way. You a black woman. You got done dirty by Brother Polite, right? Now, that's an easy one, but like people are gonna have to, like, let's say if he was still around, like people would have to have turned their guns on him, well, I don't want to use your guns, but turn their
That's how you use that type of language. You gonna get me banned, brother.
My bad. Turn their rhetoric, rhetorical, you know what I mean. Turn their rhetoric towards them, because we got to clear them out. That's just, I mean, it just is what it is, because you're not going to be able to. You're not going to have legitimacy, because because like for us, for men, we generally don't have. I mean, we have to deal with these little fly balls, but not in the same way that women do, not in the same capacity and intimacy that the women do. So we're just going to have to call them out, get them up out of here, and let them know that, hey, you are not. And these aren't all my like original ideas. I've from some of my original ideas, and then some of the ideas that I've heard around. Just people also said. So I don't want to be like it's just me, but like yeah, it's just going to have to be. We're going to have to clean house and get these cats up out of here. Can you guys hear me?
Understood. So yeah, yes. Go ahead, but is it Yevis?
Eve, like Yves Saint Laurent. I don't know. If you
okay, got it. My apologies.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I wanted.
Apologetic. I don't speak French. My bad, brother.
No, it's okay, man. You might want to hit up one of these expensive stores with the new, the new doctorate, bringing much prosperity to you. And I just want to make sure you pronounce the Yves Saint Laurent right. You know what I mean? I wanted to ask the brother, like, how can you tell who these people are? I mean, you think Brother Polite is a example of Pan-Africans? I don't even know if he's a Pan-African.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great yes. Absolutely.
No,
right. But yes, we may not know if he's a Pan-Africanist, but so let me say this. When we start off, I said we open this up to the Black conscious community as well. Right. And so I would look at one of the things in terms of his behavior. The fact that, and Brother Dwayne, he's the resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks and Beatline Network. He spoke about this on almost ad nauseum. But if you look at his behavior, someone who, of course, is really, of course, from all apparent sources, what we saw, he was someone who practiced, polyandry, something like that, right?
Yeah.
However, he tended to sexualize all the women he was with. You only saw them; they were dressed in a manner that was very sexual, right? And so you would say, if you're someone who's conscious, why are you sexualizing this woman? Why aren't you showing the world that you appreciate this woman for the totality of who they are?
Yeah,
right. So that would be something where someone say, "Hey, what you're promoting isn't congruent with what you're doing isn't congruent with what you're promoting."
No, it's something that's indicative.
Go ahead.
In the Black churches. You see it in the Black church as well. You see it in the
yes.
Some of these other cults that have happened. I don't want to call the Ansar Ullah brothers, but remember, if you remember, Dr. Malachi Z. York took all those people down to Atlanta.
You're breaking up on me. Yes.
But he took all those people down
to Georgia, yes.
And it's absolute power. A lot of these guys who lead these cults, they're in all religions. They wear all different types of clothes, and it's nasty business all the way around. But absolute power corrupts. When people put their life and their spirituality in the hands of another person, that people tend to take advantage. I don't think it's Pan-Africans or Afrocentrics. Like I don't know if I would say that he was either one of those things from the small little bit that I know about him. But at the same time, I wouldn't paint everybody with such a wide brush.
Absolutely, wide brush, absolutely. Very quickly, this goes back to
Dr. Lumumba.
One is the Black.
No, I don't know. There's a lag, so
yeah. So just real quick, the Chicago Defender is a Black nationalist newspaper. They've been since, of course. I'm sorry.
I think there's a lag, Dr. Lumumba.
Say that one more time.
There's a lag.
Okay,
so
is that on my end?
It might be on my end.
I think it is. No, Ease, I think I can hear you pretty clearly. Hey, Eves, can you hear me?
I hear you good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's delay. Okay. I think the delay is on your side.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave out. I'm going to leave out and come back in.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna leave and then come back in.
You want us to
Okay.
stay here?
Yeah, let's see if we can keep the stream going. But go ahead.
Yeah. But I think you were asking about you said something along the lines of not painting everyone with a broad brush. Can you repeat that thought for me?
Yeah, nah, man. So I'm a Pan-African. I don't own a dashiki. I don't own beads. I don't do it. I'm not a Pan-African because of spirituality or trying to get connected to something. I'm a technologist. I build systems. I'm an agile software product manager. I know that's a long title, but yeah. So I just recently wrote a book about if you wanted to do Pan-Africanism, how to get it done, and what that political construct would have to look like. And I'm not like any of those things, but even the guys that you mentioned, Polite's not a Pan-African.
Well, I also threw out Pan-African, Afrocentric. I kind of threw out like the whole, because like they, even though there's a slight difference between Pan-African, Afrocentrism, and Afrocentric, and pro-black and conscious, like there's a slight differences between the each one, but they're both kind of like in the same. They all go to the same cookout. You know what I'm saying? Even though they have slight differences. And what I'm saying is that there's a kind of a thread that goes on between, goes on within them, right? Like, if you're Pan-African, there's certain things that I can kind of like uh, points that me and you will both share if we're both Pan-African, or me and you would share if we're both pro-blacks or whatever. There's certain things that we would share. And I'm saying is that somebody who is a predator, who is a predator can mimic, the look of a Pan-African, and then use that to then go and do damage and act out their predations. And that's what I was trying to get at. Not saying that because you wear a dashiki, or I'm not saying that every Pan-African wears a dashiki. I was just saying that as like as an analogy. But I'm saying is that a predator can mimic like a scholar, or mimic an activist to get so that they can go in and do what they want to do. And that's what I was saying, that we as Pan-Africans or whatever, we need to call it out, and we need not just to call it out, but we need to attack it and make sure that it is understood that that type of behavior will not be accepted. And I think that would do two things: one, it keeps the trash out, and two, it would prove to onlookers that this is a place, that this can be a safe place, that if you come to, let's say, a Pan-African, Afrocentric, pro-black conscious event, that you're going to be safe, and that the people there, particularly the men there, are going to respect you and see you for who you are and value you as a human being, rather than I'm just trying to spit this conscious game to you so that I can do whatever I need to do with you. And I think that was the point that I was making. Not saying that everybody who's a conscious guy is a predator. I'm just saying that you have predators who will pretend to be conscious in order to get their prey.
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying. I think in the case of like guys like Polite, more specifically, it's the power that's gotten to their head. Like the truth is a powerful thing, and once someone opens the door and starts giving you information, and then eventually it starts to be elaborated on, and they start to play loose with facts. But when people, it's intoxicating when people get that information, and it lets dudes like that take advantage. I mistakenly thought you meant that you thought that Pan-Africans somehow were lecherous or something like that. But no, I appreciate the elaboration. I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm eating right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Sandman, if you wanted to go.
Yeah. I didn't catch everything that you were saying about Brother Polite. I know that he had some legal issues when he was something about sexual assault or something to
Oh
that
no,
effect.
he's in jail right now. He's going to be in there for a long time. I think he got like 15 years in.
15
Yeah,
years.
he got 15 years. Yeah, he. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I didn't stay up with that, but
Yeah,
it was bad. The last time I saw it, the case was bad. That it's a woman he was dating's daughter. It's like
daughter. Yeah,
it's ugly stuff.
yeah. He ended up taking. He was dealing with a woman, and then he took his. I think these are all like in the court case. He took her daughter up to a party. Dr. Lumumba, I think he had like a buzzing going on.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so he took the woman's daughter up not out of state, but he took her away and like took her to a party. And then I think it was alleged that he drugged her and then he assaulted her. And, like the proof was, they found his DNA from his, found his DNA on her mouth and on her neck and on her scarf. You know what I'm saying? So it was pretty clear what he had did to her, and that was enough to indict him, and he's going to be sitting in jail for like I think the next 15 years or something like that. So,
I never
but I
really
mean,
understood Brother Polite's.
He's in prison. He's in prison.
yeah,
Seemed like he was just like a social media figure. I didn't understand what his objective was. Did
no,
you
he was.
understand?
I mean, like I said, he was trying to do the whole, fake pro, like I said, the Pan African, not just the Pan. When I say Pan African, but like the Pan African conscious angle to, get his notoriety, and then once he gets his notoriety, then like I said, he's going to have people flocking to him looking for enlightenment, looking for community or whatever, and then he just,
Yeah.
he took advantage of the situation.
To be clear, he's not a Pan-African. To be clear,
Right, but yeah, to be that's fine. But wait,
that black conscious type circle.
Yeah, what image did he try to portray? What image did he
No.
throw on? He may not have been a Pan African, but he put on the Pan African clothes to do what he needed to do.
You mean conscious? You mean like
Conscious.
Afrocentric black consciousness type? Because
I-
Pan-Africanism is a specific ideology.
I said I don't know of a word to incorporate Pan Africanism, Afrocentrism, Afrocentric, pro-black, and conscious, and just the conscious community. I don't know what word. I think conscious community kind of enwraps all of them.
I would say conscious community is the right word.
So conscious, you would say conscious community.
Yeah,
you would say that.
I think it needs to be, because again, Pan-Africanism is a very specific ideology. Like people like to make it a lifestyle, or it's none of those things. It's if you read Kwame Nkrumah, it's a very specific thing, and and people play very fast and loose with that. But the people who believe in that look all different kind of ways. All different kinds of ages. It's not a it's a political ideology. It's a little bit different than something like if you were to say the conscious community. Like I think that's more accurate.
So if I say conscious community, I'm trying to use a word that encompasses all of them. So Pan-African, Afrocentrism, Afrocentric, pro-blacks. I just need a word to encompasses all of them. And that's the word I'm
conscious. Conscious would be the word.
Okay.
Conscious.
Okay. Yeah. So the
conscious would be right. So let me read this. Pastor John says, polite, egotistic, circus clown. We have to be more aware of these personalities and teach the youth to spot these loons. So I would agree. One of the other issues, and I've talked about this ad nauseum on my platform when we talk about protecting Black children, is the number one cause of a child being a victim of childhood sexual abuse is the mother bringing these clowns around the child.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And typically what happens, it comes in the form of some type of financial largesse, right? This man is going to help me out in some way financially and caring for my child. The woman brings her guard down because now she's not financially distressed. And guess what happens?
What happened in the police?
I don't know if that more is a conscious community issue rather than this woman bringing this man around her child.
Right. Hey, Dr. Lumumba, I came up
And
here
we just gotta be
specifically. I don't know if you can hear me, but I came up specifically because I wanted to share that my book came out, and I wanted if you could post in the chat your like a place where an address I could send it, or if you got a PO box or something like that. I'd like to send you a copy of my book.
yes. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the private chat.
All right, because I'm about to take off, and thank you for allowing me to share, and I will be back again. This will be like my 4th or 5th time coming up, but I believe in what you're doing. I believe in your scholarship, and
Yes, sir.
I learned a lot from you. So I'll be talking to you again soon.
I remember you, Eve. You're
Appreciate it.
Haiti, right?
All right.
Say that again.
I said I remember you're from Haiti, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's from Haiti.
Yeah.
Haiti. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, gentlemen,
Absolutely.
thank you for
By
letting
way
me
of
come up.
NYC. Absolutely.
Yeah. By way of Bed-Stuy, do or die. All right,
No
fam.
problem.
Thank you.
But I wish you were here real quick, because we did a part of our Pan-African leadership series. We did a show on Santi Belair, who of course was the niece-in-law of Toussaint Louverture, right? Who was one of the female soldiers. You may be familiar with who she is.
Yes, she was
Yeah, so we hold it down, but the South Passe.
She's somebody special, yo. If you're gonna do any content on that, let me know. I would like to take a listen.
We already did.
Oh, okay.
So you have to go on YouTube. Go to, of course, Lumumba Speak. Yeah, go to playlist, and then when you see Pan-African Leadership Series, you'll be able to find the video.
Okay, I will find it. Thank you so much. Let's keep
right.
talking, fellas.
Thank you. So appreciation to Brother Prester John. He states, I might dropped it, I nailed it, right? But this isn't even an issue, in my opinion, that really is reflective of a conscious community issue. It's an issue of women, unfortunately, and this is something that's germane in America. So it's not just a Black woman, but American women putting their children in precarious situations, right? That's the number one cause. This is, in my opinion, this is based on the FBI crime statistics. The number one cause of child sexual abuse, children being the victims of sexual predation, is the mothers bringing these men around their child. The argument many people, feminists, would argue, well, they're struggling financially to care of the child. Well, if they stayed with the father or picked a better individual to be the father, the child wouldn't be being put in this precarious situation to where the value system is whatever's convenient, or whoever comes around flashing money or promises of financial stability then has access to your kid, right? So that's not even an issue that has anything to do with being conscious. That's an issue of people, I would argue, not planning, right? We have to, make sure we're people, we don't plan to fail. We simply fail to plan. So that's kind of a side issue. But once again, I think you would be able to see, and Prester John, I hope you could tap in and be part of the conversation, that his behavior was representative of someone who you would argue should not be taken serious, right? I would argue Dr. Umar Johnson's behavior publicly is representation of someone that you wouldn't take serious. This is why most people just see him as a meme. I would argue someone such as, Tariq Nasheed, his behavior is not reflective of someone who should be taken serious. So when you see these things, we need to believe people for who they are, right? When someone shows who they are, we need to believe them, in the words of Dr. Cream or Dr. Maya Angelou. So these are things that we need to consider, right, in terms of holding people accountable internally in our community.
Also,
that if your behavior is untoward, is unbecoming, then you know what? Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think there's a delay, but
go right ahead, Simon.
Yeah, so I was saying that I think it's also important for us as Black people, a part of the Pan-African movement, that we also have evidence and facts to back up the allegations that are up against, like, certain people who are supposed to be quote unquote leading the movement. So because the media, even social media, has a way of pushing people's a name through the bud, just to take away some of their power too. So I think we have to be able to hold them accountable and get facts to back up the allegations that are put up against them, and then help hold them accountable for what they did, right or wrong.
Absolutely. But I think one of the issues we tend to find, even with that, is based on the inability of many of our people to think critically and independently, even when there is evidence, right? They would simply say, well, but they're just bringing us up to bring this strong black man down. A great example of that would be Elijah Muhammad, right? So it's oftentimes when you're dealing with individuals who are part of cults, and brother, of course, LMA and brother Eve brought that up. What happens is, even when you provide evidence, these individuals are so brainwashed, so thoroughly indoctrinated that they can't see the forest from the trees.
Yeah. And it just so happens that, a lot of people lead with emotions, and it's easy to sway the audience or the group at mass by appealing to their emotional string.
Absolutely.
So if you could say something like,
absolutely.
So if you could say something like a leader did this, and the public will be appalled at his actions, and they'll disregard all the positive things he may or may not have done and focus on the allegations that are up against him, But
I think you're right. I would also argue marketing. One of the weaknesses that we tend to find in Pan-Africanism is the lack of marketing. As a brother defender of logic stated, he said he wasn't aware of any websites, but I provided two. One would be a Black nationalist website, the Chicago Defender. Then, of course, the latter for the former was the Pan-Africanist website, Panafricanism, right? So I think one of the issues is just the lack of marketing, that brothers and sisters aren't even aware that these type of entities exist. Go right ahead, brother Sandman.
Oh yeah, thank you for letting me in there. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get to the bottom of how this Pan-African movement kind of turned into chaos by maybe going through a little memory lane. So when would you say the Pan-African movement was at its peak, and when do you think it started to make a nosedive?
So I think you can argue there have been a couple peaks, right? I think one, you can argue during the late 19th century, we had Martin Delany. He was really holding it down, doing his thug dizzle, as many people would say. I would argue another peak was during the early 20th century, particularly the 1920s, in 1910s and 20s, with the rise of Marcus Garvey and Garveyism, right? I would argue another peak we found was during the African decolonization and, of course, the civil rights and Black power movements here in the United States. We found, I would argue, so I think you could argue there have been three peaks historically regarding Pan-Africanism, right? The late 19th, the mid to late 19th century, the early 20th century, then of course the 1960s, 1970s.
Okay, and do you know what? So it kind of like goes up and down like a cycle, almost like the stock market.
Yes, sir.
What caused each one of those peaks to start to take a nosedive downward? Do you know what was the thing that was going on?
So yeah, I couldn't say one particular thing. What I will say is one of the things that I've noticed is that every period of real or perceived African progress, it was followed by a period of what? Racial, God, Lord, how much? What's the time I want to use? Racial resentment, right? Retrenchment. I'm sorry, retrenchment, not resentment,
right,
retrenchment. Right. So we're talking about here in the United States. We follow reconstruction of what the nadir race relations, right? You follow this concept of Garvey with what? The Red Scare and the rise of McCarthyism, right? You follow the 60s and 70s civil rights Black power movement with what? You follow that in African decolonization with neocolonialism, structural adjustment, and on the continent, and then of course law and order here in the United States. So I would make the argument that whenever there's been real or even perceived African progress, it's been, of course, followed by periods of racialized retrenchment, and this is true globally. It's been followed by periods of retrenchment.
Right.
Yes, and Pastor John says one of the biggest threats to Pan-Africanism is the pivot to Black conservatism and FBA ADOS. Yes, so we see this rather strident form of militant Black integrationism, right? But Pastor John calls Black conservatism, I would agree. And so we tend to see what happened is these are individuals who are actually aligning for some reason with far-right white ideologies. I can recall, and I'm glad you brought this up, Pastor John. I hope you could tap in and be part of the conversation. You know, you do not have to come up to be part of the combo, part of the conversation. Sister Michelle, you're tapping in. Appreciate the sister coming in from
good
Maryland.
evening.
Okay. Shout out to the East Coast in the house, right? Shout out to those terrapins. One of the issues we found was I was at the gym with Gillian. You know, I'm getting my body by Lumumba, and you know how I get down. You know what I mean? Suit on Batman, okay? And the brother was like, well, yeah, you know, and Hitler, you know, Hitler actually, he liked Black people. And I said, no, he didn't. He said, how do you know that? I said, it's very simple. I read Mein Kampf. So I said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to the gym tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel, and I'm going to read to you what Hitler had to say about Black people. I said, but you can't go around just promoting misinformation. So I would argue the same thing is prevalent today, where we have a lot of individuals who have to make that pivot to Black conservative thought, to the FBA, ADOS, aligning themselves with far-right ideologies, thinking that somehow, because they have an anathema for maybe immigrants or LGBTQ, that they would align themselves with Black people. But that's not the case. Not only have I read Mein Kampf, which of course is my struggle, I've also read the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Right? So yeah, it's just, once again, it goes to what Brother LMA's talked about. This they read a little bit, they get a little bit of information because of social media. They're neophytes, they're novices, and then they go out and then they're trying to proselytize to the masses as if there's someone who actually is scholarly and well informed.
Yeah, when did this so-called
go right ahead, sister?
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Sandman. Mr. Sandman,
Hello,
your question.
hello, Mr. Sandman. Hello, Mr. MLA. How are you guys doing this evening?
We're doing fine.
I know, I know I'm a little late to the forum, but this is my issue with Pan-Africanism, or my concern with Pan-Africanism, is that it hasn't really kept up with the times in terms of, you know, re-engaging the youth, continuation, especially as the mother continent is facing a lot of socioeconomic challenges that it has never faced before. So you see a lot of African youths, Black youths on the continent trying to leave, youths in the Caribbean, they're just trying to leave. You know, nobody, you know, where is the pride in our identity? Where in terms of sustaining socioeconomic balance in our community so we can sustain ourselves? We've lost that. We've totally want the Eurocentric way of life, nuclear family. So all that contributes to people wanting to separate from Pan-Africanism or putting Pan-Africanism behind, because you have a lot of Black leaders who claim Pan-Africanism, but they act differently. And then, you know, we also have to see, you know, the rise of our family systems being strangulated economically, and underlying differences within our family system. I mean, we could go on and on and on. That's not the point.
Family systems being strangulated economically, and underlying differences within our family system.
So let me ask you a question. You said re-engaging the youth. What would that look like?
Re-engaging the youth, you know, educationally, maybe on the weekends. Like, we have a lot of Black churches here. We have, you know, we have a lot of Black institutions here that are in major cities. You know, why can't we have some type of national program? So maybe on the weekends or on when kids' days off, you know, we can engage them. I mean, this is something we could have been, like, for example, the Jewish community, in many of their universities, they have what are those Jewish programs for the students, so they can meet, you know, engage in their culture, understand their culture, so they can sustain themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I was doing a little bit of research on the history of communities in the United States, not just the Black community, but all the different communities, whether it be the Jews, the Italians, Irish, so on and so forth, is we used to be a country of or the United States in particular used to be a country where everyone stayed in their own communities, and if you wanted to move into a Jewish community, Italian community, you had to be accepted by that community before they allowed you in. But then it turned into like a classist thing, whereas though people didn't stay in the community, they wanted to move up. So if they gained a good education and they started to make more money, then they didn't want to stay in the same Black community. They wanted to move over to the suburbs, and then if they could get $1 million home, and they wanted to move out into the sticks somewhere. So it's hard to have that unification, as a community, and push pan-Africanism when everyone's, chasing the bag as opposed to working together as a unit.
Exactly. Good. Thank you for saying that.
Hey, someone has an echo. Hey, and Michelle, you bring up a really good point about a lot of Pan Africans not being, or at least Pan Africans, the thought not being able to keep up with the times. And I was thinking about that in terms of, there's like one channel I like, Dr. Gerald Horn, and it was, I don't want to like begrudge the guy, but he's an elder. He's absolutely an elder, absolute legend, a wealth of knowledge. But it was so funny because I like the fact that he's on YouTube or whatever, but like, there's a couple of like he works with a radio station out in California. And maybe because I'm just kind of like, 'cause I don't listen to the radio, like they were doing like a pledge drive, and they were talking about they needed money for their radio or their antenna to repair their antenna. I'm like, the hell I care about an antenna, radio for? I don't listen to the radio. I listen to, YouTube or whatever. And it's so funny, like like obviously the podcast game is like on fire now. And you can probably say that the fact that, the presidential candidate, Trump was willing to go on to certain podcasts and, just kind of talk his talk, which pretty much helped him get into the White House in a sense because he was able to reach a certain demographic of people who were just not into politics like that, right? And I think that there's something to be said about it. And going back to what Dr. Lumumba was saying about marketing, there's a charisma thing to it, and it's like obviously you know there's a surface level attraction to something. Like let's say, okay, let's go to the red pill, right? Like the red pill, like it wasn't so much the ideology as it was. Okay, I'll say it was both. It was the ideology and it was the personalities spewing the red pill
Absolutely.
That really drove it, right? Because if you would have had someone who was like, fat and sloppy and kind of a lame, it would have never picked up smoke. It would have just been like, okay, you're a lame, you're a loser. That's why you're mad. But when you have like relatively, when you have that aesthetic, saying these things, and then that person's also entertaining and he's also funny, then that will carry a message way further than just the what's what I'm looking for than the message itself. I mean, than the content of the message. The charisma of the messenger will take it far, and then that could be a double-edged sword because, like I said, if you have a lot of men, I say men, but people with good charisma, like to the unsuspecting, like it's very difficult for them to for the unsuspecting layman, they might be able to tell whether they're being manipulated or when someone's actually spitting truth. And so
Absolutely.
the one thing I would like to see is, one thing I would like to see is, maybe the intellectuals, the academics, those guys get with, some of these, someone who's a little bit more charismatic, almost like like the late night show. Like if you look at like back in the day, Jay Leno and David Letterman and all those guys, right? Like they're funny, but other people write their jokes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's not like one person, you see it's called the Jay Leno show, but it's the Jay Leno team. Like there's, he has his producers, he has his joke writers and all this other stuff. He's just the front man. And so I would like to see something like that where you can get, someone who has, the charisma of, I'm trying to think of just someone who's, the charismas are one of these red pillars, but he's talking Pan-Africanism.
Well, you
And I
could
think
mention
that's
someone like Kevin Samuels. So Kevin Samuels would be a great example.
Oh yeah. If Kevin Samuels, like you said, he would just he had the charisma to carry it. Now, what he was saying, people can make the argument. I think so. A lot of what he was saying was kind of bullshit. But his charisma and his appeal and his, he took his message of the Black manosphere. He took it further than anyone else ever could. Like, he was like the first person in the Black manosphere to get 1 million followers. You know what I'm saying? Like, he took that message further than anybody could. You know what I'm saying? And he wasn't saying anything different. Say that one more time.
He had men and women done.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And you would think that the women would have the most, you know what I'm saying? So, but that's neither here nor there. But what I'm getting at is that there's a marketing and charisma gap that we need to work on. And it's hard because, like I said, I'm not saying this. You can have charisma and you can have, intelligence and academics or whatever. But a lot of times those bubbles don't necessarily, those what I call a Venn diagram, they don't necessarily meet as a Venn diagram, And so, not as a Venn diagram, I'm sorry, what's the word? I forgot that shit.
But you got Dr. Umar. Yeah. I know he has some personal problems right now, but Dr. Umar, he doesn't even have a YouTube channel, and he's crossed that line.
He has a YouTube channel. Real quick, he has a YouTube channel. It's King Kong Consciousness on YouTube. But
no, it's not his. Somebody does it. Somebody puts it on for him, but it's not his personally.
Okay, but here's a couple of issues, and one I want, and I'll address the Umar. But there's a couple of issues. Number one, when you talk about why aren't the churches, right? This is a conversation I had with Brother Dwayne Omawale, and he actually called me maybe about a week and a half ago and said, "Hey, you were right. When you talk about the church, their primary goal is to proselytize, to save souls, not address the social, political, and economic issues that Black people face." And this is even in Black churches. If you go into a Black church talking political game, talking pan-Africanism, talking politics, talking education, what they're going to say to you is what? If it ain't got anything to do with Jesus, there's the door. Right? So these are things to consider. Now with Umar Johnson, in my personal opinion, is not a Pan-Africanist in any way, shape, or form. He is someone who uses Pan-Africanism to promote his personal brand. This is a reality. He's able to get away with that because he's loquacious and he's articulate and he's a great communicator. But his behavior and his subsequent statements have shown that this is not someone who is serious about restoring African people to their traditional greatness. We just got to be honest about that.
Well, I would like to put him through the test. If I had enough money, I would address him personally and say that I want to, open your school right now. I have $1 million. Let's get it started. If he gives me the runaround, then I would know that, all of the things that's suspected of him is probably the truth. Because his excuse all of these years has been he's not getting funded by Black people, or the wealthy Black don't fund it because they don't want to be associated with a Pan-African movement. But if we could get solid, definitive evidence that is all a grift, then I would love to be that person to expose him. But as of right now, I think it's speculation.
Well, respectfully, we could throw the school out. We could look at his personal public behavior as an example of this is not someone who is serious about restoring African people to their traditional greatness.
Well, what about the idea of the school? Do you think the school itself will be something positive if he was legitimate and sincere about it?
No, and I'm gonna tell you why.
He's running it.
Hold on, real quick. I'm gonna tell you why I say no. One, because this is the man that said that he wants only women working at the school, and that if they behave in a manner that is inappropriate, he's going to paddle them. He actually said this. This is up on YouTube. This isn't someone who's serious about educating African people so that they can actually.
I think he was just being, a little jokey joke, bad joke.
Okay, so I don't think so hold on, real quick, sister. So let's say that he was making that comment in jest. I make comments in jest, right? People know that if you meet me at the gym, I'll be talking crazy. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gonna hit that way all the time. But when you go on a public platform and you are a Pan-Africanist, you're claiming to be a Pan-Africanist, this is the ideology that is on life support. That's promised so much, but given very little. And you're consistently engaged in this way, I can't take you serious. Come on now,
No,
like
I'm
we
just
got a whole.
saying, like,
This man is damn near
cutting
50.
out
Hold on,
his.
real quick. This man is 50 years old, almost 50 years old. This man is a PhD. He's a PhD, just like your boy. If you're serious, you know better. Period. There's no excuse for that.
Right. No, I'm
And my
not
question
talking
to you,
about
Dr. Lumumba, why aren't brothers like you, a group of, excuse me, Mr. Sandman, brothers like you, a group of you could come together and actually address Dr. Umar? Why hasn't that been done?
I have. So Dr. Umar Johnson and I, we met in 2011 in Cincinnati in a Marcus Garvey birthday celebration. And since then, we exchanged numbers, we've talked on the phone, we conversed, we text the whole nine. Right? And then when I started to address his behavior, he cut me off and blocked me. And I emailed him, I texted him, sent him messages on social media. No response now.
Okay, then. Okay. Then my
You
question to you, there's enough black men.
Real quick.
Sure.
When we talk about traditional African culture and traditional African societies, everybody is held accountable for their actions and behavior. Everyone.
Yes, but he's at a level where I think it maybe take a community now will have to come together strategically and address him. Say, hey, Brother Umar, these are our concerns. We're not out to bash you or embarrass you, but we need these addressed ASAP.
Well, so here's
because everybody's making a joke out of him. People are trying to make jokes out of him. People are trying to slander him.
This is what, real quick, I'm gonna answer the question. This is what I'm gonna say. One, when you're holding someone accountable, you don't need to say, "Hey, we're not trying to bash you," or da 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 da. You let the person know your behavior is unbecoming and is wrong, and it has to cease and desist immediately. Period. There is no conversation. Either you're gonna stop doing this, or you're now a social leper. It's that simple. That's what accountability looks like.
Okay, well, right now he's a social media giant now. I mean, all over TikTok.
So
now his daughter put him another level.
And this is how you engage in making someone a social leper. The community decides to no longer view the person's content, and that makes them irrelevant. This is not difficult at all. If you all found out that I was out here beating on black women, beating on black children, that I was a drunk, I was a miscreant, I'm robbing banks at night, you may not be able to meet me physically to say, hey, Bakari, what you're doing is wrong. But guess what you could do? You can advocate that nobody watch my channel. And when my views go down to zero, guess what happens? Eventually, I'm going to realize that I'm irrelevant and I'm going to stop posting.
Well, the thing is, right, you are aware of what he has claimed that his school is about. Now, say if we were to pick a different individual, someone with more classy of a disposition, who meets our so-called level of ethics, do you think the school would be something positive?
Yes, but here's the thing: there are already schools like that. Especially in Philadelphia, they have a number of African-centered, Pan-African, and independent black schools. I could think of the Lotus Academy for one, which is dynamic and was featured in the documentary film 500 Years Later.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. I wasn't
aware.
So
they have they have a number of African-centered schools in Philadelphia that are independent.
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah,
that's
a number of them.
That's something that should be marketed a lot more than.
Yeah. So once again, it goes back to the marketing. But nah, man, listen, that's a grift. Stop it. It's been going on for 15, 16 years. 15, 16 years. He says one thing and that is something else. He said that they had done auto repairs in the school. That he posted a video about 3 weeks ago showing that the school on the interior was still in disarray. Like, stop it. When are we gonna hold people accountable and not keep giving them a pass just because they look like us?
Yeah, I will give.
It's shame on us.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, I think even with Umar, I would give him the benefit of the doubt. I think that he, in his hubris, he did not realize what it took to run a school. And he just opened his big mouth thinking that a school will be just as easy as opening up an after school program.
I understand that. So we can X out the school. We can X out the school. We focus on the behavior. And we can focus on the behavior, the public behavior. You know the camera's running and you're acting like a goddamn buffoon. You know the camera's running and you're making claims that you know people are going to push back and say, hey, this is problematic. You know the camera's running and you're on Roland Martin's show and you say, well, I'm celibate, but you're actually sleeping with a sister who's a exotic dancer. Stop the cap. You can take the school out of it.
When did he say he was
The
celibate?
problem is, though, is
This was on Roland Martin's show. He was on the show. They was having a conversation, and he said, "Well, I'm celibate right now, and I don't have a problem with a brother having sexual liaisons with women who are entertainers."
He was celibate in the moment. He was celibate in the moment. Maybe things change.
This is the problem. We make excuses for bullshit. That's the problem.
Here's the thing.
Hold on. That's like me saying, "Well, I don't interracially date." And then you find me out somewhere with some Chinese woman and say, well, I wasn't interracially dating in the moment. Stop the cap. This is why accountability is so hard in our community. Because we keep coming up with, excuse my French, sister, bullshit excuses for a flat out lie. This is the fucking problem.
The problem is, though, Dr. Umar is a man, and we have to come to the realization that he's not perfect, right?
It has nothing to do with that. There's the expectation of someone who positions themselves as a public intellectual who is working in the best interest of the African and African American community, that you practice what you preach. No one needs to be perfect. No one needs to be holier than thou. But if you say one thing and do another, that is hypocrisy.
Like, for instance, take Donald Trump, for instance. He's probably...
We're not going to use Trump as an example. We're keeping this germane to our community.
Well, the thing is, if we want to build something and the so-called leaders who might be a part of that movement, if we just cut them off, even if they're qualified for the position, just because we don't like their behavior, we're not going to be able to build anything.
Well, one, I would argue he's not qualified for immunity because he's built nothing. The second issue is when you have someone in the position of leadership who is engaging in untoward behavior, it sets a poor example for those who are following. So, for example, and you are a father, right? We all know this. And just so we can take it away from being a parent. If there's someone in the neighborhood or someone at your school that you look up to, if he's acting in a way that's unbecoming, you would then believe that it's okay for you to act in a manner that's unbecoming. There are prerequisites to leadership in any capacity.
But not all people are built for leadership.
Right, exactly. And so that's why when you see that these people don't have these prerequisites, they can't be in a position of leadership.
All the behavior in the world, but just like LMA said before, they have no charisma. So they can't galvanize the people to follow their words. So it's like you got to take the good with the bad, the pros with the cons.
Absolutely not. We have to have higher standards. Preston Johnson, anybody who goes on live, laying down in their bed, looking up into the camera is a flaming joke. I mean, this guy's done lives sitting in the jacuzzi with his shirt off. Like, stop. I mean, Lord, that shows how little he thinks about us. The book he wrote, and I don't want to make this an indictment of Umar Johnson, and there are a number of issues we want to address, but this is a man who wrote a book, Psychoacademic Holocaust, with no citations whatsoever. So that shows how little he thinks of Black people, that he doesn't even have the wherewithal, and he knows this because he's a PhD like me, that you're supposed to cite your goddamn sources. Stop the goddamn bullshit.
But he said that the reason why he didn't have to cite his sources.
That is Chitlin Circuit scholarship. I'm not going to provide Chitlin Circuit scholarship to my community if I'm trying to disseminate information that's going to help them. If I'm someone who's serious. But that shows how much you think of Black people. I'm going to write a book that's supposed to be scholarly in nature, and I don't even have to include any citations because you're just going to believe what I say anyway.
The Prince of Pan-Africanism.
Then he says he's the greatest Pan-Africanist since Marcus Garvey. So you've accomplished more than Steve Biko, than Thomas and Carr, since Malcolm X, since Asana Shakur. Like, stop it. This is all about self-promotion. And if you can't see this because you don't want to. And one of the reasons we accept this type of bullshit, my French is Frenching tonight, right? Is because there's such a vacuum in Black leadership that we accept any and everything as a leader.
No, I just believe that you have to make people useful. or if you just waste the talents that they have, you can't you can't get the full opportunity out of the situation.
Well,
Well,
I
if
believe
that's
that
the case, then
sometimes. I believe
Like
sometimes you got to cut a man
he might
loose.
be a criminal. If someone might be a criminal, if he's a great warrior and he can go to war for us, then you put him to war.
Well, I was as someone who was in the military, and Sam, Mr. Sandman, you were in the military as well.
Right.
Criminals tend to be undisciplined. I doubt that anyone who is a criminal will be a great warrior. And I say this because when I was in the military, there were individuals who joined the military because the judge told them it's either jail or the military, prison or the military. They chose the military. And guess what? They typically flamed out in 6 to 8 months. They actually got kicked out the military because they lacked the discipline needed and necessary to be an adequate and competent soldier.
Well, you could take, for instance, the general that Abraham Lincoln chose, who was very undisciplined, but he's the general that won the Union Army the war.
What are you talking about? You talking about Grant?
One of the generals that
Abraham Lincoln
didn't get along with. Yeah, he was the one that just he wouldn't. He was very undisciplined, did what everybody to do, didn't follow any orders, but he was the most effective general in the world. I mean, in the war, and he wanted to help with. He was the galvanizing, or he was the biggest factor of helping the Union Army win the war against the Confederate Army.
But even to that point, this general, he was part of an organization. He wasn't the top, he was taking orders from other people. The problem with Umar, he's just a one man. He's like, he answers to no one. Like, he's just doing what he wants to do. He's not part of an organization that has standards and protocol or whatever. He's just doing what he wants to do and calling himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism. He's self-proclaimed Prince of Pan-Africanism rather than being part of an organization that, can check him. You know what I'm saying? Who does he ever bring up, like, as in terms of like, if even like Dr. Lumumba, he brings up what's the guy, what's the guy's name? Your favorite historian, Dwayne Omawale. Yeah. You have people that you bounce ideas off of. Who does Umar Johnson bounce ideas off? He's just one man talking shit. But
not only that, I also have people who I'm accountable to. For example, Dr. Tway, Mama Nazibo from South Africa, Dr. Tway from Liberia, Baba Larry Crow, who was the mentee of Dr. John Henry Clark. So I give you an example of accountability. There was a situation where we were having a naming ceremony for my daughter, and Baba Crow comes up to Columbus and performs a naming ceremony. He's in African garb, and I got on like sweats and a t-shirt. Baba Crow said, "What the hell are you doing? Why aren't you dressed properly for this occasion?" I go and change, right? Have my son and the daughter go and change. So afterwards, we perform the ceremony. It goes great. So Baba Crow says, "Well, I'm sorry, Bakari, I shouldn't have corrected you in front of your children." I said, "No, actually, you should have, because they need to see that I'm accountable to someone as well, that I have an authority figure as well, and that the buck just doesn't stop with me." See, that's how somebody moves when they're serious. You see what I'm saying here? I'm a grown man, I own place, the whole nine. Appreciate you, Bob. He came into my house and said, "Hey, what you're doing is unacceptable." And I said, "Yes, sir. That's a 10-4. I'm gonna change my behavior immediately." That's what accountability looks like. He didn't have to, massage my feelings. I just want to say, because what you're doing is a problem. Real accountability, brother LMA, Mr. Sandman can come up to me and say, "Hey, Bakari, what you're doing is a problem. You out here on the street corner drinking a 40. What the French toast are you doing? Throw that shit away and take your ass home." They don't have to massage my feelings. They can tell me, "You're not sitting on your square. You're not being your best self. You need to get your act together right now." That's what it looks like when there's actual accountability. Because right is right and wrong is wrong. That's what accountability looks like. I have a personal council of elders. That's what it looks like. And that's the problem. There isn't any accountability.
And unfortunately, Dr. Umar is a
Dr. Umar's going to be on he's being solicited by many podcasters to be on the podcast soon. So
I know. And there's a reason for that. Too. Yeah, there's a reason for that. If you've noticed, many of these podcasters are typically unaware of the subject matter that they're even interviewing him about. right? The second issue is entertainment value, right? And we see this on a number of podcasts that typically these podcasters, they aren't very well educated, right? So it's like Brother LMA said, they're a joke as well, right? None of these individuals or entities are something to be taken serious. I know Shannon Sharp, who I think is one of the greatest tight ends of all time in terms of NFL history. His podcast and his YouTube channel received it got the best YouTube channel and podcast of the year. And I said, yeah, but all he does is all it is celebrity gossip. Isn't anything that actually helps the Black community any? Right? So we have to look at the content, right? And there's nothing there to offer that's going to help our people. But I said we have to have a level of high standard in terms of behavioral expectations, period. Either you're going to behave correctly or you get the fish toast out. I played football. There's always been a guy on the team, a dynamic defensive tackle, a great linebacker. Man, this guy is the best running back we've seen in 20 years. But if you don't act right in school, you don't get your grades right. Sometimes you got to cut a man loose. Get out of here. Because that person will be a cancer. Their behavior will spread to other people. It sets a bad precedent that it's okay to behave and act and comport yourself in this manner. And that goes right back to what the sister who was the brainchild of this live talked about on Facebook, the lack of accountability. If you hold somebody accountable, you don't go up to them and say, well, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but you tell them what you're doing is a problem, it's wrong, and you don't do it again. And if you got a problem with it, there's the door, and don't bring your ass back over here anymore. Period. You don't coddle when you hold someone accountable. You don't massage a person's ego and spare the person's feelings. You tell them the truth. If they got a problem accepting the truth, that's their problem, not ours. That's what accountability looks like.
And you also could look at like another sports analogy would be Phil Jackson, who three-peated twice with the Bulls and once with the Lakers, and he had to deal with a lot of knuckleheads as well with Dennis Rodman.
Mm-hmm.
But he had to know how to influence this guy to get motivated to play, but because of his ability.
Once again, that's sports. It's sports, so it's a bit different, right? It's a bit different because it's sports. In sports, there's an expectation that these guys are gonna. I mean, most athletes, and I know this as someone who was a former athlete, tend to be socially immature for their age, right? And so, how do you coddle and manipulate these guys in order to put their best out on a basketball court, right? Real quick, Defender of Logic stated, I also noticed that Umar never engages with his intellectual equals. Absolutely facts. He's always talking to podcasters and entertainers. I've yet to see him talking with scholars and other PhDs. Absolutely. Facts on facts on facts. Matter of fact, I think Brother Sandman, Brother LMA, and even a couple of the other brothers who are frequent guests on, of course, Lumumba Speaks, talked about how they wanted me to interview more of my equals, right? That it was great content. And I've been doing that. Yes. This is how you know if a person's serious or not. Part of being a scholar is allowing yourself to be challenged intellectually so that you can see what flaws or holes you have in your own argument, and then you're able to strengthen your position. Right? Because I've seen him on podcasts, and I've even done reaction videos to some of his interviews where he's making claims that are patently false, adverse to facts, ahistorical in nature. But because the individuals he's being interviewed by don't know the history, he's able to just talk over them.
And Dr. Lumumba, this might be another, I'm not trying to put more on your plate, but this may be another avenue for you to go down, is to do a reactions channel to a lot of these, don't have to be just Umar, but just bad people who carry who are in the conscious circle, who put on the conscious garb, and just do reaction channels. So whenever they say something that's out of pocket, wrong, incorrect, you can just make you got content where you can actually challenge them and say, no, you're wrong because of this, 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 and this.
And I've done that with a couple of individuals. I think Larry Elder, Candace Owens, etc. But actually, we're actually looking for a partner. We need someone to tap in who's willing to actually help assist in leading some of our lives. The reason for this is, family, I'm going to be starting a new position the 1st of April as the director of the Sacramento State University Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. African American Culture Center. I'll be the director of the.
Are you going to move to California?
Yes, that's in California. And so I'm going back to Cali, right? And so as a result, we're going to need some help to keep the show up and running.
Okay, yeah, great. That's great
Yeah,
news.
congratulations.
Sacramento has a vibrant African American community, I heard.
Yes. And so, yeah, I'm going to be making that move. I'm actually, my place is a bit in disarray because I'm kind of in the middle of packing things now. But yes, so if that is possible, please reach out. You all could go on, you can send me a message online. Of course, you all know the website and, of course, my email, because we're going to be looking for, of course, help in continuing to keep the show consistent, particularly particularly when it comes to the Pan-African Leadership Series, right? So if we can at the very least have people support us in leading some of those conversations on the Pan-African Leadership Series, that would be great. Greatly appreciated.
And then by you having this channel, would this be in conflict with your position? Because sometimes some topics are controversial.
No, they know about everything that I do. So that's not an issue at all.
Well, look at what happened. I mean, again, I guess we can have another topic, but look at what happened to the student that was protesting at Columbia University. This, things can get sticky. Look at they've done, like, even Candace Owens and what's this girl's name, Faith. They made some comments about the situation in the Middle East. Next thing you know, they're being pulled. So again, that's another. I guess that could be
there's a couple things. But there's a couple things, right? This is why you clear things with your supervisor, your authorizing agent, right? So there are certain conversations that my supervisor said, hey, you don't want to have in a public forum because it may reflect poorly on the institution, and because I'm not a faculty, I don't have academic freedom, right? Academic freedom, you can say whatever you want for any reason you can. I'm not faculty, I'm administration, and so as a result, you just have to be responsible with your words and what you're saying. And those issues aren't germane to me because those issues aren't germane to African people, right? So that's not an issue I would be touching anyway. But once again, it all comes down to having those conversations with your supervisor and making sure that they know what you're doing. And there may be times where they say, hey, you know what, that's something that you don't need to touch on because it may reflect poorly. And so you move accordingly.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard Cornel West is a Sacramento native. You could run into him and maybe do some stuff with that guy. I mean,
yeah, but I think he's not. But he's not. I think he's at Princeton. Yeah, he's at Princeton, and I've met Cornel West. I don't think highly of him as a scholar in terms of Black people, right? So I'll just put it that way. I mean, I know he's a great scholar. Don't get it twisted, right? But in terms of what really, and we're about to close out in a minute, but what really propelled Cornel West to prominence as a public intellectual was his book, Race Matters. And in that book, he really he did go up in Sacramento. He took shots at Dr. John Henry Clark, Marcus Garvey, etc. That's what propelled him into prominence as a Black scholar, a Black public scholar, public intellectuals, because he was taking shot at people who were Pan-Africanist and unapologetically African. So just something to consider.
Okay.
So I'm aware of these things. I mean, and he makes a number of claims that if you are in the know, you're like, that makes no sense. For example, he argues that he's a Marxist, but then he promotes a concept that he calls Christian Marxism. If anyone's familiar with Marxism has an extreme anathema for religion, right? So it makes no sense whatsoever if you are in the know. Moreover, I don't think he's been married a number of times and he's never married a Black woman.
Yeah.
So like I said, there's a lot of people who are just all over the place when it comes to their pro-Blackness. So yeah.
So, but family, we're going to close out and we're going to do a part 2 on this live. So come back. We're going to do a part 2. We're going to do a part 2 where we really break down what are some of the behavioral expectations, right, of someone who argues that they are a member of the conscious community, the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion, and then, of course, Pan-Africanism, right? And then we're going to really focus on solutions, right? So Sister Michelle, who's out in Maryland, You talked about, of course, organizations. So we're going to have a conversation on part 2 regarding, we need you to be there, about how do you go about developing that organizational network, not only locally, but statewide, nationally, and internationally as well.
Oh yes, definitely. That's what we definitely need. And I think another reason, back to Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanists felt in terms of not using the technology to reunify the Black community globally. And I think that was another failure too, not using the technology as needed.
Could you provide an example of them about Pan-Africanists failing to do that?
Again, transitioning into more of the YouTube. I'm noticing now, like, what is the scholar name? He has the Black Liberation Channel that just started about maybe 2 years ago or a year ago, but you're late. If you had started off like the African Diaspora Channel, he started out in the grind like 10 years ago. Now, he's built up his format, but he's not a Pan-Africanism per se.
No, he's not. No.
Who isn't?
Phil.
Scott.
Yeah.
He's the oddball, because he's like all up in Africa, but then he, so
and then he's talking, and really what I noticed, and the first, he takes his cues from Tariq Nasheed. So when I first kind of was getting heavy into the YouTube streets, I was on Dinah's platform. We were having a conversation, and he was saying some negative things about brothers and sisters, Haitian brothers and sisters, etc. And I counteracted every claim he made and showed how what he said was false. And I said, listen, brother, you have a platform with over 1 million subscribers, and every claim you just made is adverse to the facts and ahistorical in nature. What the French toast are you doing? I said, you need to tighten up. And I remember I went to bed that night, woke up, and I had about 200 more followers on my platform. Right? So once again, it goes back to what LMA said. These are individuals who are neophytes, who aren't scholarly, who aren't well-read, and I watched his show. He's all over the place. He doesn't oftentimes know what he's talking about, because unfortunately, we know it's a privilege to have the time and the luxury to go to school and read and study and do all those type of things. But you have a responsibility to our people that if you're going to disseminate information, you make sure that the information you're disseminating is factual in nature. We have that responsibility, right? So there are a number of issues, but yeah, when he started off, I thought he was a Pan-African. It was a African Diaspora News Channel, which of course is a Pan-Africanist term. And then next, he started talking negatively about African people and Caribbean immigrants. But then he's the same guy claiming you need to have an Africa plan. Makes no sense whatsoever. He's going over to the continent and talking about the great time he has and how he's being embraced and they're happy that he's embracing his homeland and so on and so forth. Then he gets on a podcast and he's shitting on Black people in Africa. What the French soldiers going on here? So we see a number of individuals are ideologically inconsistent. I would argue that one of the reasons that is the case is because they don't actually read on any political ideology. So they're all over the place. So when I had when I was a member of an organization, that the Coalition of African Unity, our orientation packet, people had to read up on the history of integrationism, Pan-Africanism, and Black conservative thought. So you're going to read this. You're going to leave here, you're at least going to get an education. And we didn't tell people what they needed to follow. We said, you're going to read this information. It took about 30 minutes. And then you're going to, of course, come back and tell us where you see yourself aligning. And this wasn't information I came up with. We simply copied and pasted the history of Black political activism from Dr. James Cone's book, Malcolm and Martin in America, because it provides a historical overview of integrationism and Black nationalism. And then we provided the historical overview of Black conservative thought in the book Saviors of Sellouts on Black conservative thought. Right? So this is scholarly literature, and we had them read it. And most people, if you say, hey, we want you to read, they're going to be like, well, this ain't the organization for me. I know, because I've been doing this a long time. It's just the reality. So something to consider. Defender of logic. Yes, I saw your question. Yes, the email that I have on my profile, you're able to reach out to me. I answer that email every day. So I look forward to hearing from you. But so these are some of the issues. One is people simply being lazy, intellectually lazy at that. Because if you're going to do the work, you need to know why you're doing the work. Because if not, somebody could pull up and make some claims to you that are false, and you believe it. I remember there was a sister I was seeing one time, and she was in classes when we both were in undergrad, and white guy said, well, Black History Month was created by white people. No one in the class was able to counter the fact that what this white guy said about Black History Month wasn't true. Why? Because our punk ass don't like to read. Punk asses don't like to read. Intellectually fucking lazy. People who are intellectually lazy are easy to manipulate. Easy to manipulate. So it becomes what? A revolving door of individuals who just go off what they're told. What such and such said is embarrassing. Doesn't mean you have to be a freaking scholar, but it's embarrassing that we are in our community on a macro level, our people lack we have an inability to be incisive. So we talk about, we want to get down to the brass tacks. What are some of the real issues? These are the real issues. So when someone is showing you they're a buffoon, they're a clown, they're not someone to be taken serious, and you still keep coming up with reasons to defend the motherfucker. Right. That's a problem. And then we wonder why we have the issues we have on the world stage. We wonder why people don't take us serious. Part of it is anti-Black racism. Part of it is our goddamn selves. Like the comment from Defender of Logic, the man who does not read has no advantage over the man who cannot read. Come on. Come on. So just come on. We gotta pull up and we gotta handle our BI. We gotta handle our BI. We really do. We really do. Right. I've been part of some nonprofit organizations. Yes. The new wave of anti-intellectualism is very intentional. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anti-intellectualism has made a strident return.
Hey, Sandman, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. I guess we're the
Brother
last
froze.
two up here, huh?
Yeah, I guess he froze. He was cooking.
Yeah.
But no, I think, but yeah, to his point, yeah, I do think that and I think that's like the biggest problem with the social of the conscious community is that we just do not have enough intellectual firepower to correct these charlatans who make their way to the top, And so, like I said, if we had a more a more in depth uh, baseline of knowledge, Brother Polite, Umar Johnson would never have been able to get to the heights that they are, or at least they would just be considered. They would be seen as a gesture and not someone to be taken seriously. Because, like to me, I do think Umar is funny. Like I think Umar does have a place, but he needs to be placed within an organization, and he needs bounds around him. Like we can't allow someone like Umar Johnson to roll around by himself and just say what he wants to say. Like he has a
I
talent, and to your
just
point. But I
I
think
just
he
feel
he
that I just feel that we just need a a direction to head and a goal like to reach. And if we focus on that goal, we can get organized and get over like some of the small things that are holding us back. But if we're just wandering in the jungle of this person is that way or that person is this way and this person is that way, we're just going to be wandering in an abyss of no direction. So we need to
and,
set a goal and we need to move towards that goal as a people if we want
well,
to achieve something. So
I don't
to
think
say that I mean, yeah, we could like get rid of Brother Polite, we could get rid of Dr. Umar Johnson, what have you. But is that going to get us any closer to the goal? What is the goal? You see what I'm saying? So Like for instance, we were just talking about the reading thing. In my opinion, reading the English language is a tool. You know, we were born over here as Africans and weren't even allowed to read English. They forced us to get rid of our native tongue.
Right.
Okay. Forced us to learn English, didn't even allow us to read. Now, being able to read the English language or European language is our standard or our definition of what it means to be a successful Black person. How come we don't have any Black people teaching us how to read Yoruba, one of the other West African languages? That I think that would be something more positive that would get us in a direction towards where we're trying to go, which is pan-Africanism. That would be something that we could all move towards, that would put us in the direction that we're trying to go. Hello?
Well, I think learning an African language is more an example of cultural nationalism rather than Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. Yeah. I would feel that the goal should be the social, economic, and political liberation in the sense that we are, uh, you know, social welfare, economic welfare, like, economically, what's I'm looking for, progressive, economically advanced. So to me, and independent or interdependent with the rest of the world. So that we're not dependent, like we're not dependent on any other group of people, that we can move under our own steam, and we can, we have the intellectual, industrial power under our own, wind in a sense, and then we can move forward in society. I think that's my goal. Like, it's not necessarily that we all be friends, that we're all happy under someone else's system, that we need to have our own system that serves our own interests, and that we can live in peace and prosperity uh, on this planet. Like, that's my idea of what the goal is. So
I just think that if you want to shift the mindset of the youth, particularly,
Absolutely.
if you teach them something, a language to speak that was made by us, they would have more pride in themselves as an African, and they would act accordingly.
I mean, you can do that. I wouldn't, I wouldn't put too much into that. I would mostly concern myself with, like I said, social cohesion and camaraderie, um, technological advancement, basically understanding STEM, but not just STEM, just any type of academic. Like, you can, there's multiple fields of scholarship. I don't use the word legitimate, but like of useful scholarship and academic that you go on. You can go do STEM, you can do law, you can do literature, you can do psychology, you can do philosophy, you can do medicine. Like, we need all of our people to at least be in those fields so that we can materially solve our own problem, right? Um, he talked a lot of shit about Thomas Sowell, but he did have an interview, decades ago, and he was talking about, like, one of the good things, one of the best things that young African Americans can do is to learn a trade or learn a skill, because he was saying, like, you can use that skill to make money, but obviously that requires that you have to work for the dominant society. But he also said that in the meantime, those skills will be useful inside of your own community, right? So let's say you learn how to be an electrician. There may be someone down the street who's having electrical problems. They can come to you now. You know what I'm saying? Now you can solve the problem, and you can improve the productivity of that person by solving this electrical issue that they have, or installing something that requires electricity, right? That's a skill that you can learn and that you can use to, solve problems and increase productivity. So
Yeah,
I
I
think that
like the ideas too, but I think we're at the beginning of a technological revolution that's going to change the way humans live. Like, have you downloaded any of the latest artificial intelligence bots?
no, I haven't, but not followed, but I've heard that they're getting pretty,
Yeah,
they're
it's getting
entering the
ridiculous now. Like, it's like, why even send your kid to school when, like, I got this new AI bot, this the Grok 3 that was owned by what you
Elon
call it,
Musk.
Elon Musk, right? All I
Mhm.
gotta do is take a picture of a test question and an answer for me in like 5 seconds.
Right, but
You
that's
can
not the
you
same.
can you can write down the most complicated calculus equation and it'll write out the whole formula for you in like
Real
10
Right,
quick,
but
seconds.
Jonathan
right, but
Francis,
how do
he
you know
stated
it's right though?
comment. Hopefully, you could tap in to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It'll tell you like it's process, the whole entire process from beginning to the end. It doesn't just give you the answer. It gives you
Right,
the
but you
whole
have to.
entire op process, and you can verify if it was correct based on the
Right, but
process that it took. So it'll write it all down. So it'll say I multiply this by that, and then I took
right, but you have to
the
understand it though.
equation for that. Yeah. So yeah, of course, but what I think what'll happen is it's going to revolutionize the way that students and young people start to learn when they'll be able to engage with artificial intelligence that could, spit these formulas out to them at a fast rate of pace of speed, and they could, uh, learn at their own pace as opposed to being in a class setting and one kid who might be way more advanced than him, that kid has to slow down his pace of learning so that the kid at the lowest of the class can catch up, or vice versa. Like the kids at the top who are the most in-depth the knowledge of that particular subject matter, they're making it hard for the people at the bottom of the class to understand the complexity of the subject matter at hand. So I think it's going to change the way that human beings in general learn.
Right, but I guess that's learning. But I guess the point I was making is that we need to have these skills so that when we do come together, we can actually build and produce and be productive and solve our own problems. That's the point I was getting at in terms of us having the skills. Um, but yeah.
Very good, very good. So, family, hey, we're gonna close out, and once again, we're gonna do a part 2 to this show in probably a couple of days. On Black, peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on Black. Peace.